You're stuck, not because you're lazy, but because your brain is wired to resist action. This audiobook will reprogram your mind to force success, destroy procrastination, and make execution automatic, starting now. Force your mind into success. Audiobook Introduction. Right now, you're sitting there with a familiar feeling in your gut, that heavy mix of frustration and self-doubt that comes from knowing you're capable of more, yet somehow remaining stuck. You've tried everything: motivation videos, productivity apps, vision boards, but nothing seems to stick. The cycle continues. Plan, hesitate, procrastinate, repeat. But here's what no one told you. Your brain isn't broken. Your willpower isn't weak. You're operating exactly as evolution designed you to, avoiding discomfort and preserving energy at all costs. This survival mechanism served our ancestors well when conserving energy meant survival. But in today's world, it's the very thing holding you back from reaching your potential. You've been sold the myth that you need to feel ready, motivated, or inspired to take action, that somewhere out there, the perfect moment awaits. But that moment will never come. The harsh truth? Action comes first. Readiness follows. Always. This isn't another feel-good manual filled with empty promises and temporary motivation hits. This is a practical system for rewiring your brain's response to discomfort and uncertainty. You'll learn exactly how to override your survival instincts, kill hesitation before it takes root, and build an identity that makes action automatic. Through proven psychological techniques and real-world applications, you'll discover how to turn procrastination from your enemy into your signal for immediate action. No more waiting. No more excuses. No more letting your primitive brain dictate your future. Chapter 1. The real reason you can't get started. You're staring at that blank screen again, watching the cursor blink mockingly as midnight approaches. The gym bag sits untouched in the corner, a silent reminder of another promise unfulfilled. Your phone offers its familiar escape. Just a few more minutes of scrolling, you tell yourself, before tackling that looming project deadline. But deep down, you know tomorrow will bring the same pattern of avoidance and self-disappointment. This isn't about lack of motivation. It's not about missing some magical productivity secret. What's really happening is a primal battle in your brain, one that's been playing out since our earliest ancestors had to decide whether to venture from their caves into uncertain territory. Every time you face a challenging task, your brain performs a lightning-fast risk assessment. Writing that proposal, hitting the gym, starting that business, these all register as potential threats to your survival-oriented mind. Why? Because they all involve uncertainty and discomfort. Your brain, designed to keep you safe and preserve energy, automatically steers you toward the path of least resistance. This isn't a character flaw. It's biology in action. Your brain is doing exactly what evolution programmed it to do. The problem is, this ancient survival mechanism is now sabotaging your modern goals and aspirations. Every meaningful achievement in life requires stepping into discomfort, yet your brain is wired to avoid it at all costs. Consider Thomas Edison's journey to inventing the light bulb. What's often overlooked is that Edison wasn't simply a genius who got lucky. He was a master of forcing himself to act despite overwhelming resistance. While others would have quit after a handful of failed experiments, Edison forced himself to continue through thousands of attempts. Each failure increased the mental resistance, yet he persisted. His success wasn't born from motivation or inspiration. It came from his ability to override his brain's natural avoidance response and take relentless action. The key insight? Those who achieve extraordinary things aren't free from resistance. They have just mastered the art of acting despite it. They don't wait for motivation or the right moment. They've learned to force action before their brain can talk them out of it. This is where Leo's story becomes particularly relevant. For years, Leo dreamed of writing a novel. He had the perfect plot outlined in his head, character backgrounds developed, and even a writing space set up. But day after day, he found himself waiting for the right moment to start. He told himself he needed more research, more preparation, more inspiration. In reality, his brain was protecting him from the discomfort of potential failure. Then one morning, instead of thinking about writing, Leo forced himself to write a single sentence. Not a perfect sentence, just any sentence. Before his brain could mount its usual resistance, his fingers were moving across the keyboard. That one forced action broke the spell of avoidance. By the end of that day, he had written 3 pages, not because he felt inspired, but because he had short-circuited his brain's resistance response through immediate action. The secret is elegantly simple. Action kills procrastination in real time. The longer you wait, the more time you give resistance to build its case against action. But when you move immediately, before your brain can process all the potential discomforts and uncertainties, you bypass this resistance entirely. Your challenge is this. The next time you feel that familiar resistance rising, whether it's towards sending that important email, starting your workout, or tackling that project, move immediately. Don't think. Don't plan. Don't wait for the right moment. Force yourself to take one small action before your brain can talk you out of it. This isn't about motivation or willpower. It's about speed of execution. The more you practice this immediate action response, the more you'll rewire your brain's default setting from avoidance to execution. Chapter 2. Stop waiting for motivation. You wake up and immediately check your phone, scrolling through motivational quotes and inspirational videos. Just a few more minutes, you tell yourself, until I feel ready. The morning slips away as you wait for that magical spark of motivation to ignite your actions. But here's the uncomfortable truth you need to hear. That spark isn't coming, and even if it does, it won't last. Think about how many times you felt incredibly motivated. Maybe after watching an inspiring movie or hearing a powerful speech. For a brief moment, anything seems possible. You're ready to conquer the world. But by the next morning, that feeling has evaporated like morning dew, leaving you right back where you started. This is the motivation trap, and it's killing your dreams one day at a time. The fundamental problem isn't that you lack motivation. It's that you're waiting for it in the first place. Motivation is like a fair-weather friend who shows up when conditions are perfect, but disappears the moment things get challenging. Yet we've been conditioned to believe that we need to feel motivated before we can take action. This belief is perhaps the most dangerous lie in personal development. Take Kobe Bryant's legendary work ethic. His Mamba mentality wasn't built on motivation. It was built on systematic, relentless action. When asked about his 4 a.m. training sessions, Kobe never talked about feeling inspired. Instead, he spoke about commitment and routine. He trained himself to execute regardless of his emotional state. Whether he felt energized or exhausted, whether he was nursing injuries or coming off a victory, the action remained constant. What made Kobe extraordinary wasn't his talent or even his dedication. It was his complete rejection of motivation as a prerequisite for action. He understood that waiting to feel ready was a luxury he couldn't afford. While others hit the snooze button waiting for motivation, he was already in the gym, forcing his body and mind to adapt to his demands. This isn't just about sports. This principle applies to every area of life where consistent action determines success. The most successful entrepreneurs don't wait until they feel inspired to make tough decisions. The best writers don't wait for the muse to strike. They sit down and write, whether the words flow easily or have to be dragged out one painful sentence at a time. The key insight is this: action isn't the result of motivation. Motivation is the result of action. When you take action, regardless of how you feel, you create momentum. This momentum generates results, and these results fuel genuine, sustainable motivation. It's a virtuous cycle, but it has to start with action, not feeling. Observe Eva's story. For years, she dreamed of becoming a concert pianist. She had natural talent and a beautiful grand piano sitting in her living room. But day after day, she found herself waiting for the right mood to practice. Some days she felt too tired. Other days, she wasn't feeling creative enough. Her progress stalled not because she lacked ability, but because she had tied her actions to her emotional state. Everything changed when Eva made a simple but powerful decision. She would practice at 7 a.m. every day, regardless of how she felt. The first few mornings were brutal. Her fingers felt stiff, her mind foggy, her body resistant. But she forced herself to sit at the piano and play scales, even when every fiber of her being wanted to crawl back into bed. A remarkable transformation began to unfold. After 2 weeks, she noticed she was no longer fighting herself at 7 a.m. Her body automatically moved toward the piano. After a month, she found herself looking forward to practice sessions. Not because she suddenly became more motivated, but because she had rewired her brain to make action automatic. This is the power of forcing action without waiting for motivation. When you remove the emotional prerequisite for action, you free yourself from the tyranny of mood. Your success is no longer hostage to how you feel on any given day. The science behind this is clear. Your brain adapts to whatever you consistently do. When you force yourself to take action regardless of your emotional state, you create new neural pathways that bypass the need for motivation. It's like building a highway around a traffic jam. You no longer need to fight through the congestion of feelings and moods to get where you want to go. This doesn't mean it's easy. The first few times you force yourself to act without motivation will feel like swimming upstream. Your brain will protest. It will offer you 1,000 reasonable-sounding excuses. But each time you override these excuses with action, you strengthen your action-taking muscles and weaken the hold that motivation has over your behavior. Chapter 3. Kill Analysis Paralysis. You're sitting there right now with a dream, an idea, a goal that won't let you sleep. Maybe it's starting a business, writing a book, or completely reinventing your career. You've done your research, endless hours of it. Your browser has more open tabs than you can count. You've created spreadsheets, mind maps, and detailed plans. You've read every article, watched every video, and consulted every expert you can find. And yet, you haven't taken a single concrete step toward making it real. You tell yourself you're being thorough, responsible, strategic, but deep down, you know the truth. You're hiding behind preparation. Every new piece of research, every additional analysis, every what-if scenario is just another way to avoid taking action. You're trapped in the overthinking loop, and it's killing your dreams more effectively than any external obstacle ever could. The cruel irony of overthinking is that it feels productive. It masquerades as diligence, as careful planning, as intelligent strategy. But in reality, it's fear wearing a mask of responsibility. Every hour spent in endless analysis is an hour not spent actually moving toward your goals. While you're perfecting your plan, opportunities are passing you by, and your competitors, who may have less talent but more courage, are taking imperfect action and learning from real experience. Consider Jeff Bezos in the early days of Amazon. When he decided to expand beyond books, he didn't spend years analyzing every possible product category or crafting the perfect expansion strategy. He moved fast, started small, and learned through action. In his 1997 letter to shareholders, Bezos wrote about what he called Day One thinking, a mindset of swift action and constant experimentation. He understood that in a rapidly changing world, excessive analysis is more dangerous than imperfect action. Most decisions should probably be made with somewhere around 70% of the information you wish you had, Bezos later explained. If you wait for 90%, in most cases, you're probably being slow. This wasn't reckless. It was strategic recognition that the cost of delay often exceeds the cost of imperfect action. The most successful people and organizations in the world don't achieve their goals through perfect planning. They succeed through rapid iteration and learning from real-world feedback. They understand that analysis has diminishing returns, but action always yields new insights. Think about it. Every successful business you admire started with an imperfect version. Every author you read published their first book before they felt completely ready. Every athlete competed before they mastered their craft. They all understood a fundamental truth. You learn more from one day of action than from months of analysis. The problem isn't that analysis itself is bad. It's that we use it as a shield against the discomfort of uncertainty. We convince ourselves that if we just gather more information, if we just plan a little more carefully, we can eliminate all risk. But this is an illusion. No amount of planning can eliminate uncertainty. The only way to gain real clarity is through action. This brings us to David's story. A brilliant software engineer, David had spent 6 months researching his startup idea. He had detailed market analyses, elaborate technical specifications, and comprehensive business plans. He could talk for hours about his vision, but he hadn't written a single line of code. Every time he came close to starting, he found another aspect that needed more research. What if users didn't like the interface? What if the technology stack wasn't scalable enough? What if competitors entered the market? Valid questions, certainly, but they had become excuses for inaction. One morning, after yet another sleepless night of planning, David had an epiphany. He realized that all his analysis was just sophisticated procrastination. Instead of opening another research tab, he opened his code editor. Within 2 hours, he had built a crude prototype. Ugly, limited, but real. He showed this basic version to a few potential users. Their feedback was eye-opening, and nothing like what his research had predicted. Features he thought were crucial turned out to be unnecessary. Problems he hadn't considered emerged. In one day of real-world testing, he learned more than in months of analysis. Within a week, David had a working minimum viable product. Was it perfect? Far from it. But it was real, and it was teaching him exactly what he needed to know to make it better. 6 months later, his company had paying customers and was growing steadily. The insight that changed everything wasn't found in research. It came from forcing himself to take imperfect action. This pattern repeats across every domain of achievement. The most successful people aren't necessarily the best planners. They're the ones who are willing to act before they feel completely ready. They understand that perfect analysis is impossible, but perfect action isn't necessary. The science behind this is clear. Our brains are wired to seek certainty and avoid risk. When faced with complex decisions or uncertain outcomes, we default to gathering more information, even when additional information won't actually improve our decision-making. This analysis paralysis is a form of self-protective behavior that ultimately becomes self-defeating. The solution isn't to abandon analysis entirely. It's to recognize when analysis has served its purpose and is now serving as a barrier to progress. Here's a practical framework. Give yourself a strict time limit for research and planning. Once that time is up, force yourself to take action, even if you don't feel ready. Make your actions small enough that failure won't be catastrophic, but significant enough to provide real learning. Remember, The goal isn't to eliminate uncertainty, it's to act in spite of it. Every successful person you admire has felt the same uncertainty you're feeling right now. The difference is, they chose to act anyway. The next time you catch yourself stuck in the overthinking loop, ask yourself, what's the smallest action I could take right now that would move me closer to my goal? Then take that action immediately, before your brain has time to generate more reasons for delay. Your challenge: identify one goal or project where you've been stuck in analysis paralysis. Right now, not tomorrow, not after more research. Take one concrete action toward that goal. Make it small enough that you can complete it in the next hour. Don't worry about whether it's the perfect action. Just make it real. Chapter 4. When resistance becomes your compass. You sit down to start an important task, and suddenly your mind comes up with every possible reason not to do it. You feel an invisible force pushing you toward distractions, checking your phone, organizing your desk, or even doing other productive things just to avoid this one task. That feeling? That's resistance. And most people see it as a stop sign when, in reality, it's a compass pointing directly at what they should be doing. The more significant the task, the stronger that force becomes. It's not random. It's precisely calibrated to the importance of what you're attempting. When was the last time you felt resistance toward watching Netflix or scrolling social media? Never. Because those activities don't challenge you to grow. But try to write that first page of your book, launch that business, or have that difficult conversation. Suddenly, resistance appears like a wall between you and your goals. This isn't a coincidence. It's your brain's evolutionary response to potential change, and understanding this changes everything. Resistance isn't your enemy. It's your guide. Think about it. Your brain doesn't waste energy fighting against things that don't matter. It only mobilizes resistance when something has the potential to transform you. The stronger the resistance, the more important the task is to your growth. Stephen Pressfield, author of The War of Art, fought this battle every day for years. Before becoming a successful writer, he faced crippling resistance each morning when sitting down to write. He would clean his entire apartment, reorganize his files, or even take on home improvement projects, anything to avoid facing the blank page. But one day, Pressfield had a revelation that changed everything. The resistance he felt wasn't a warning to stop. It was a signal that he was on exactly the right path. The more his work mattered, the stronger the resistance became. Instead of letting it defeat him, he started using it as a compass. When resistance appeared, he knew he was heading in the right direction. This insight transformed his entire approach. Rather than trying to eliminate resistance, he began to welcome it. The more scared we are of a work or calling, the more sure we can be that we have to do it, he wrote. This mindset shift led him from being a struggling writer to a best-selling author. The truth is, every meaningful achievement in human history was accomplished by someone who felt resistance and acted anyway. Every entrepreneur, artist, athlete, or innovator faces this same force. The difference isn't in whether they feel resistance, it's in how they interpret it. When you understand that resistance is actually pointing you toward your most important work, everything changes. Instead of seeing it as an obstacle, you recognize it as a signal, a built-in navigation system showing you exactly where you need to go. Let's talk about Mia, a certified fitness trainer with years of in-person experience. She knew her expertise could help thousands online, but every time she thought about recording her first video, overwhelming resistance kicked in. Her mind flooded with doubts. What if I look awkward? What if no one watches? What if people criticize me? For months, she convinced herself these feelings meant she wasn't ready. She kept preparing, buying better equipment, studying more about video production, waiting for the right time. But the resistance only grew stronger. Then she learned about reframing resistance as a compass. She realized that the very intensity of her resistance was proof that this step mattered, that it had the potential to transform her career and impact more lives. Instead of waiting for the resistance to disappear, she decided to use it as confirmation she was on the right path. The next morning, using just her phone and basic knowledge, she recorded and posted her first workout video. Was it perfect? Did she feel comfortable? Absolutely not. But by pushing through that resistance, she broke through a barrier that had been holding her back for months. Within weeks, she had a growing online following. More importantly, she had developed a new relationship with resistance. Each time she felt that familiar pushback, whether about trying new content formats or expanding her offerings, she recognized it as a signal to push forward, not pull back. Your resistance works the same way. That project you've been avoiding, that conversation you keep postponing, that habit you know you need to start, the very fact that you feel resistance toward these things is proof they matter. They're opportunities for growth, disguised as obstacles. Your challenge: identify the task that makes you the most uncomfortable, the one you know you need to do but keep avoiding. That's your resistance. Instead of running from it, tackle it head on. When you feel resistance, take it as a green light and move forward anyway. Chapter 5. Rewiring your brain for instant action. You know that moment right before you need to do something important? That split second where your mind starts churning with doubts, excuses, and reasons to delay? That micro-hesitation is costing you everything. It's the difference between those who achieve their dreams and those who only dream about achieving. Right now, your brain is wired to pause, question, and analyze before taking action. This isn't your fault. It's a pattern that's been reinforced over years, maybe decades. But here's the game-changing truth. Your brain's wiring isn't fixed. Just like a muscle can be trained to become stronger, your neural pathways can be rewired to make action your default response. Think about typing on a keyboard. When you first learned, each letter required conscious thought. Now, your fingers flow automatically. That's neural rewiring in action. The same principle applies to decision-making and action-taking. What feels unnatural today can become your automatic response tomorrow. The science behind this is fascinating. Every time you take immediate action instead of hesitating, you're not just completing a task. You're physically restructuring your brain. You're creating new neural pathways that make future action easier. This is neuroplasticity in action. Your brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections. Elon Musk's approach to business exemplifies this rewired mindset. When he conceived the idea for Tesla, conventional wisdom said starting an electric car company was impossible. The auto industry was dominated by giants with centuries of combined experience. But Musk didn't waste time debating whether it could be done. He didn't spend months analyzing every possible outcome. He started building. When asked about this approach, Musk explained that overthinking is more dangerous than underthinking. If you're trying to create something new, you can't possibly foresee all the challenges. The best thing you can do is move quickly and solve problems as they arise. This wasn't just philosophy. It was a rewired brain in action. He had trained himself to make rapid decisions and take immediate action. The results speak for themselves. While competitors were still debating whether electric cars could succeed, Tesla was already revolutionizing the industry. This wasn't because Musk had some special gene for action. He had simply rewired his brain to execute without hesitation. But this kind of rewiring isn't limited to billionaire entrepreneurs. Consider Adrian, an engineer who struggled with analysis paralysis when starting new projects. He would spend weeks researching frameworks, comparing approaches, and creating elaborate plans, all while actual coding took a back seat. His breakthrough came when he learned about the 2-second rule. The concept was simple. The moment he noticed himself starting to hesitate, he would count down from 2, then force immediate action. Not 5 seconds. That's too long. 2 seconds is just enough time to acknowledge the impulse to hesitate and override it. The first time Adrian tried this, it felt almost wrong. He caught himself starting to research yet another JavaScript framework and began the countdown. 2, 1, action. Before his mind could protest, he opened his code editor and started writing actual code. The result wasn't perfect, but it was real progress, something tangible instead of more preparation. The next day, he did it again, and again. Each time he interrupted his hesitation pattern with immediate action, he was literally rewiring his brain. Within weeks, he noticed something remarkable. The impulse to overanalyze was getting weaker. Starting new projects no longer triggered an avalanche of doubts and research. His default response was shifting from, "Let me think about this," to "Let me try this." This transformation wasn't magic. It was neuroscience in action. Every time Adrian chose action over hesitation, he strengthened new neural pathways while weakening the old ones. The same process that had once wired his brain for hesitation was now rewiring it for action. This rewiring process works in every area of life. Whether it's making sales calls, starting workouts, or having difficult conversations, the principle remains the same. The key is interrupting hesitation before it gains momentum. 2 seconds. That's all you get. Then move. Jessica, a freelance graphic designer, applied this to client communications. She had a habit of agonizing over every email, sometimes taking days to respond to simple messages. Using the 2-second rule, she forced herself to reply immediately when an email arrived. The first few responses felt rushed and imperfect. But soon, she noticed something. Clients appreciated her quick responses more than her perfectly crafted ones. Her business grew simply because she had rewired her brain for immediate action. The beauty of this approach is its simplicity. You don't need complicated techniques or lengthy preparation. You just need to catch yourself in that moment of hesitation and force immediate action. Each time you do this, you're building new neural pathways. You're literally restructuring your brain to make action your default response. Remember, this isn't about being reckless. It's about preventing analysis paralysis from killing your momentum. Some decisions require careful thought, but most of the things you hesitate about, starting that project, making that call, having that conversation, would benefit more from immediate action than extended analysis. Chapter 6. Engineering your environment for unstoppable action. You don't wake up and decide to procrastinate. It just happens. 1 minute, you're about to start working, and the next, you're scrolling social media, checking emails, or watching random videos. It feels like you lost control of your own decisions. But what if procrastination wasn't really a choice, but rather a default setting created by your environment? Think about this. When you walk into a room, your brain automatically scans for the path of least resistance. It's not making conscious decisions. It's following pre-programmed patterns based on what's immediately available. This isn't weakness. It's how your brain is designed to conserve energy. The problem? Your modern environment is engineered to distract you. Your phone, with its endless notifications and dopamine-triggering apps, sits within arm's reach. Your laptop, a portal to infinite entertainment, tempts you with just one click. Even your workspace, cluttered with visual distractions, subtly pulls your attention in a dozen different directions. Each of these environmental triggers creates micro-decisions, tiny moments where procrastination can take root. James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, discovered this truth through years of research and personal experimentation. His breakthrough came when he realized that willpower isn't about forcing yourself to resist temptation. It's about removing temptation before it can trigger procrastination. Clear began engineering his environment for success, making productive actions effortless and distractions nearly impossible to access. The results were transformative. By removing his phone from his workspace, he eliminated thousands of potential distractions each day. By preparing his writing environment the night before, he removed all friction from starting his morning work. His productivity skyrocketed not because he became more disciplined, but because he stopped relying on discipline altogether. This isn't just theory, it's neuroscience in action. Your brain forms neural pathways based on repeated behaviors. When you consistently work in an environment full of distractions, you strengthen the connection between work time and distraction time. But when you engineer your environment for focus, you begin creating new neural pathways that associate your workspace with productivity. Consider how casinos use environmental engineering to influence behavior. Everything, from the layout to the lighting to the sounds, is carefully designed to keep people gambling. They don't rely on convincing people to stay. They create an environment where staying feels like the natural choice. You can use the same principle to make productivity your default setting. Let's look at Nadia, a university student who struggled with chronic procrastination. Every time she sat down to study, her phone would buzz with notifications. She'd tell herself she'd just check quickly, but minutes would turn into hours. Her grades were suffering, and her stress was mounting. Instead of trying to build more willpower, Nadia decided to engineer her environment for success. She created what she called her focus fortress, a dedicated study space where distractions were physically impossible to access. Here's what she did. First, she identified her primary distraction triggers, her phone, social media, and a cluttered workspace. Then, she systematically eliminated each one. Her phone went into another room, locked in a drawer. She installed website blockers that made social media inaccessible during study hours. She cleared her desk of everything except her study materials. But removing distractions was only half the solution. She also made studying easier by preparing everything in advance. Her textbooks, notes, and supplies were laid out the night before. Her study outline was ready to go. When she sat down to work, there was no friction, no decisions to make, just a clear path to productivity. The transformation was immediate. Without her usual distraction triggers, her brain stopped fighting her and naturally flowed into focused work. Her study sessions became longer and more effective. Her grades improved, but more importantly, she stopped feeling guilty about procrastination because she had removed the option to procrastinate. This principle extends beyond studying. Think about any goal you're pursuing: fitness, business, creative work. The environment you create either supports or sabotages your success. Want to work out more? Put your gym clothes out the night before and sleep in them if you have to. Want to write more? Create a distraction-free writing space where that's the only activity possible. Michael, a freelance designer, applied this to his creative work. His problem wasn't lack of talent or motivation. It was his everything workspace. His desk was where he did client work, watched Netflix, played games, and browsed social media. His brain had no clear association between the space and focused work. He transformed his environment by creating distinct zones for different activities. His work desk became a sanctuary for design work only. No entertainment, no browsing, no distractions. He even used different lighting for different activities: bright, energizing light for work, and softer lighting for relaxation in other areas. The impact was profound. When he sat at his work desk, his brain automatically shifted into creative mode. There were no decisions to make, no willpower required. His environment did the heavy lifting for him. His productivity doubled, and more importantly, his work quality improved because he was fully present in his creative process. Your environment shapes your behavior more than willpower ever could. Every object in your space, every potential distraction, creates a decision point, a moment where procrastination can take root. By engineering your environment, you eliminate these decision points before they can derail you. Think about your current workspace. How many potential distractions surround you? How many micro-decisions do you face before you can start working? Each one is an opportunity for procrastination to win. But you can change this. You can create an environment where productivity isn't a choice. It's the only option. Your challenge: take 10 minutes right now to identify your top 3 distraction triggers. Then, physically remove them from your workspace. Don't hide them. Eliminate them completely. Create a space where doing the work is easier than finding a distraction. This isn't about willpower. It's about making success your default setting. Chapter 7. The 5-second kill switch. Destroying hesitation before it starts. You're standing on the edge of a diving board, high above the water. You know you have to jump. But the longer you stand there, the harder it gets. Your brain is working against you, feeding you excuses, doubts, and hesitation. The longer you wait, the less likely you are to move. This is the same psychological battle that happens every time you hesitate before taking action in your daily life. But what if you could bypass it entirely? Every second of hesitation is a chance for your brain to talk you out of action. That moment when you pause before sending an important email, making a difficult call, or starting a challenging project, that's where failure begins. Not in the task itself, but in that microscopic gap between intention and action. The science behind this is fascinating. When you hesitate, your brain's amygdala, the fear center, activates within milliseconds. It floods your system with stress hormones, triggering what neuroscientists call the pause and plan response. While this response was crucial for survival in prehistoric times, it's now the biggest obstacle between you and your goals. Hesitation kills action. The moment you pause, your brain shifts into protection mode, creating excuses and rationalizations that keep you from moving forward. This isn't weakness. It's your brain doing exactly what it's designed to do: protect you from perceived threats. The problem? Your brain can't distinguish between physical danger and psychological discomfort. It treats every challenging task as a potential threat. The trick is to shut down this hesitation before it starts. Enter the 5-second kill switch, a psychological interruption technique that forces your brain to act before fear or doubt can creep in. Mel Robbins popularized the 5-second rule, but this version is even more aggressive. Instead of counting down, you count up 1, 2, 3, and move the moment you hit 5. Why? Because counting up feels like building momentum, not a countdown to hesitation. When you count up, each number builds energy rather than depleting it. Think about a rocket launch. It counts up to liftoff, not down. This subtle shift changes everything. Instead of feeling like you're running out of time, you're building toward action. Meet Oliver, an aspiring entrepreneur who struggles to take decisive action. Whenever he needs to send an important email, make a call, or start a task, he pauses, and in that hesitation, doubt creeps in. He tells himself he needs to think it through, or wait for the right moment. But these are just sophisticated forms of procrastination. The moment he learns the 5-second kill switch, everything changes. Instead of thinking, he starts counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and moves immediately. No hesitation, no debate. The first time he uses it, He's terrified. But he sends the email anyway, makes the call anyway, starts the task anyway. Over time, his brain rewires itself to act first, think later. Within weeks, Oliver notices something remarkable. The quality of his decisions hasn't decreased, but his execution speed has doubled. Why? Because most of what we call thinking it through is actually just fear, masquerading as prudence. By eliminating the gap between intention and action, he's not just getting more done, he's breaking free from the paralysis of perfectionism. The 5-second kill switch isn't about being reckless. It's about preventing your brain from overanalyzing before action is necessary. Think of it like jumping into a cold pool. The longer you stand at the edge, the more reasons your brain will generate to avoid the discomfort. But once you're in the water, your body adapts quickly. Your challenge. The next time you hesitate, whether it's at the gym, at work, or in a personal goal, start counting up to 5 and move immediately. Don't negotiate with your brain. Act before hesitation wins. Chapter 8. The Power of Micro-Momentum. Breaking Through Inertia. Ever wonder why it's so easy to scroll through social media for hours but so hard to sit down and work for 5 minutes? You open Instagram for a quick check and emerge an hour later, but when it comes to starting that important project, even 5 minutes feels impossible. This isn't a coincidence or a character flaw. It's physics at work in your brain. The reason you stay stuck in patterns of inaction isn't because you're lazy or unmotivated. It's because your brain follows Newton's first law of motion. An object at rest stays at rest, and an object in motion stays in motion. Right now, you're trying to overcome inertia with willpower alone, and it's not working. Think about pushing a car. The hardest part isn't keeping it moving, it's getting it to move in the first place. Once it starts rolling, momentum takes over. Your brain works exactly the same way. The struggle isn't in maintaining action, it's in breaking through that initial resistance. This is where most people get it wrong. They wait for motivation to strike like lightning, hoping for some magical burst of energy that will catapult them into action. But motivation doesn't work that way. It's not the spark that starts the fire. It's the heat that keeps it burning. The science behind this is fascinating. When you're in a state of rest or procrastination, your brain is operating in what neuroscientists call the default mode network, DMN. This is your brain's autopilot. It's designed for minimal energy expenditure. Breaking out of this state requires activation energy, just like pushing that car. But once you're moving, your brain shifts into task-positive network, TPN, where action becomes self-sustaining. Jerry Seinfeld understood this principle intuitively. Early in his career, when he was still developing his craft, he didn't set out to write perfect routines or create the most successful sitcom in television history. Instead, he focused on one simple action, writing one joke every day. He famously used a wall calendar, marking each day he wrote with a big red X. His goal wasn't perfection, it was momentum. "Don't break the chain," became his mantra. Each joke, no matter how small or imperfect, kept him in motion. Some days produced genius, others produced garbage, but that wasn't the point. The point was maintaining momentum. Over time, this tiny daily action accumulated into one of the most successful comedy careers in history. The same principle applies to every area of life. Whether you're trying to build a business, get in shape, write a book, or learn a new skill, the key isn't starting big. It's starting small enough that you can't say no. This is where micro-momentum comes in. Instead of trying to tackle the whole project at once, you force yourself to take the smallest possible action that moves you forward. We're talking microscopic here, so small it seems almost ridiculous. Want to write a book? Start with one sentence. Need to clean your house? Put away one item. Want to get in shape? Do one push-up. Need to start a business? Send one email. These actions seem so small they're almost meaningless, but that's exactly why they work. Your brain can't mount its usual resistance because the action is too small to trigger fear or overwhelm. It's like sneaking past your own psychological defenses. Take Clara, a graduate student who had been putting off writing her thesis for months. Every time she thought about the project, her mind would flood with anxiety about the enormity of the task. She'd open her laptop, stare at the blank document, and eventually close it again, feeling defeated. Then she learned about micro-momentum. Instead of trying to write an entire chapter, she committed to writing just one sentence. That's it. One sentence, no matter how bad. The first day, she wrote, "The impact of social media on adolescent development remains poorly understood." It wasn't brilliant, but it was something. The magic happened next. Once that first sentence was on the page, writing a second one felt natural. Before she knew it, she had completed a paragraph. By the end of the hour, she had written 3 pages. Not because she forced herself to, but because the momentum carried her forward naturally. This wasn't a one-time fluke. Clara discovered that by using this micro-momentum approach every day, she could bypass her brain's resistance entirely. Some days, she still only wrote one sentence, and that was okay. The point wasn't the quantity, it was maintaining the momentum. The key to making micro-momentum work is removing all pressure for that first action to be good, meaningful, or significant. It doesn't matter if your first push-up is perfect, if your first sentence is brilliant, or if your first business email is eloquent. What matters is that you move from rest to motion. Think of it like rolling a snowball down a hill. The initial push doesn't need to be big. It just needs to be enough to start the ball rolling. Once it's moving, gravity, or in your case, momentum, takes over. This approach works because it hacks your brain's reward system. Every time you complete even a tiny action, your brain releases dopamine, the feel-good neurotransmitter associated with achievement. This creates a positive feedback loop, making it easier to take the next action and the next. The beauty of micro-momentum is that it's failure-proof. You can't fail at writing one sentence. You can't fail at doing one push-up. By setting the bar so low, you eliminate the fear of failure that often prevents action in the first place. Your challenge: pick one goal you've been procrastinating on. Don't think about the end result. Focus only on the smallest possible action you could take right now. Write one sentence, do one push-up, send one email. Make it so small that saying no would feel more ridiculous than doing it. Take that action immediately before your brain has time to resist. Remember, motion beats meditation every single time. Chapter 9. The Identity Switch. Becoming Unstoppable. There are 2 types of people in the world. One says, "I want to work out." The other says, "I am an athlete." The difference: identity. The first person is trying to force themselves to do something. The second person simply lives it. If you want to become unstoppable, discipline can't just be an action. It has to be who you are. Think about how many times you've said, "I should" or "I need to" today. Each of those phrases reveals a fundamental disconnect between who you are and what you're trying to do. It's like trying to force a square peg into a round hole. You might succeed occasionally through sheer willpower, but it will always feel like a struggle. The reason most people fail to maintain long-term change isn't because they lack willpower or determination. It's because they're attempting to force actions that conflict with their core identity. When your actions don't align with who you believe yourself to be, your brain creates resistance. It's like trying to drive with the parking brake on. You might move forward, but you're fighting against yourself the whole way. This explains why some people seem to effortlessly maintain habits that others struggle with daily. They're not stronger or more disciplined. They've simply aligned their actions with their identity. When you believe, I am an athlete, going to the gym isn't a choice you have to force. It's simply what athletes do. David Goggins exemplifies this principle perfectly. Before becoming one of the world's toughest endurance athletes and a Navy SEAL, he was overweight and working as a pest exterminator. His transformation wasn't just physical, it was identity-based. He didn't just start running, he became a runner. He didn't just train hard, he became someone who embraces discomfort. The shift from doing to being made his incredible achievements possible. When you identify with a new identity, Goggins explains, you don't have to force yourself to act. You just express who you are. This isn't positive thinking or self-help fluff. It's neuroscience. Your brain constantly works to maintain consistency between your actions and your self-image. When you change your identity, your brain automatically adjusts your behavior to match. The power of identity-based discipline becomes clear in the story of Noah, a graphic designer who dreamed of becoming a successful artist. For years, he struggled with consistency, trying to force himself to create daily. He read books on productivity, set countless reminders, and tried every motivation hack he could find. Nothing stuck. Then he learned about identity-based discipline. Instead of trying to force himself to make art, he started thinking differently. He stopped saying, I want to be an artist, and started saying, I am an artist. He decorated his workspace with art supplies, joined artist communities, and began introducing himself as an artist at social gatherings. The change was dramatic. Creating art was no longer something he had to force himself to do. It became a natural expression of who he was. When friends invited him out, he'd often decline, saying, I need to work on my art. Not because he was forcing himself, but because that's what artists do. His productivity tripled, not because he tried harder, but because he became aligned with his new identity. This principle works in every area of life. Want to become more productive? Stop saying, I need to be more organized, and start saying, I am someone who gets things done. Want to eat healthier? Instead of forcing yourself to diet, become someone who nourishes their body with good food. Want to write more? Don't try to write. Be a writer. The shift might feel artificial at first, like you're playing pretend. That's normal. Your brain will resist the new identity initially, throwing up thoughts like, who are you kidding? Or, this isn't really you. This resistance is actually a good sign. It means you're pushing against your old identity boundaries. Think of it like learning a new language. At first, speaking feels awkward and unnatural. You have to consciously think about every word. But with consistent practice, it becomes automatic. The same process happens with identity shifts. What feels like pretending today becomes authentic tomorrow. Your challenge: rewrite your internal dialogue. Instead of saying, I need to be more productive, say, I am the kind of person who gets things done. When you become the type of person who takes action, action becomes effortless. Chapter 10: The Accountability Engine, Making Success Inevitable. Imagine you have a deadline tomorrow, but no one will check if you complete the task. Would you still do it? Now imagine you promised a friend or your entire team that you'd have it done. Suddenly, there's pressure. You don't just want to do it, you have to. That's the power of accountability. It transforms action from an option into an obligation. When you're only accountable to yourself, it's easy to rationalize inaction. Your brain is masterful at creating convincing excuses. I'll do it tomorrow. I'm not feeling inspired. No one will notice if I skip this. But the moment someone else is invested in your success, those excuses lose their power. It's the difference between working out alone and having a training partner waiting for you at the gym at 6 a.m. The psychology behind this is fascinating. When you're solely responsible for your actions, You're dealing with internal accountability, which is notoriously unreliable. Your brain, designed for survival and comfort, will always find ways to justify taking the easier path. But external accountability bypasses this mental negotiation entirely. It creates a social contract that your brain takes far more seriously than personal promises. Warren Buffett, one of the most successful investors in history, understands this principle deeply. For over 60 years, his partnership with Charlie Munger has been more than just a business relationship. It's been an accountability system that's helped shape some of the most important financial decisions in modern history. Buffett often credits Munger for being his abominable no-man, someone who challenges his thinking and holds him to the highest standards of decision-making. "Charlie has the best 30-second mind I've ever seen," Buffett once said. "He goes from A to Z in one move. He sees the essence of everything before you even finish the sentence." This isn't just about having a smart partner. It's about having someone who won't let you settle for less than your best. But accountability doesn't always need to come from a single partner. Sometimes, the most powerful form of accountability is public commitment. Research found that people have a 65% chance of completing a goal if they commit to someone else. That number jumps to 95% when they have specific accountability appointments with their partner. This explains why Weight Watchers group meetings have been so effective for decades. It's not just about the diet plan, it's about showing up each week, stepping on the scale in front of others, and being part of a community that expects progress. The fear of letting others down becomes more powerful than the temporary discomfort of saying no to that extra slice of pizza. The key is understanding that accountability isn't about punishment or shame. It's about creating an environment where success becomes the path of least resistance. Think of it like bowling with the bumpers up. You can still throw the ball, but the guardrails ensure you'll eventually hit the pins. Jake's story illustrates this perfectly. A talented coder, he had been working on his side project for over 2 years. He had the skills, the idea, and even some initial code written. But month after month, he found reasons not to launch. "It's not perfect yet," he'd tell himself. "The market isn't ready. I need to add one more feature." Then he joined a mastermind group of other developers. Every Monday morning, each member had to share their progress from the previous week and commit to specific deliverables for the week ahead. Missing a commitment meant explaining yourself to the group and paying a $50 penalty to a charity you despise. Suddenly, Jake's project timeline accelerated dramatically. The thought of showing up empty-handed to the Monday meeting was more painful than the discomfort of pushing through his perfectionism. Within 6 weeks, he had launched the beta version of his app, something he hadn't managed to do in the previous 2 years. "The crazy thing is, the actual work wasn't any harder," Jake explained. "I just stopped allowing myself to make excuses. When you know 7 other people are expecting results, you find a way to deliver." This principle extends beyond personal projects. Companies use it through public quarterly earnings reports. Athletes use it through public training logs. Writers use it by announcing book release dates before the manuscript is finished. The mechanism is always the same. Make your commitments public, and suddenly you have no choice but to follow through. But not all accountability systems are created equal. The most effective ones share 3 key elements. First, they're specific. Vague commitments like, "I'll try to work out more," don't work. You need concrete goals. "I will complete 3 45-minute strength training sessions per week." Second, they have real consequences. These don't need to be punitive. They just need to matter to you. It could be financial, like Jake's $50 penalty, social, having to explain yourself to a respected mentor, or professional, regular progress reports to your team. Third, they're consistent. One-time check-ins aren't enough. You need regular touch points that keep you on track. This is why weekly mastermind meetings tend to be more effective than monthly ones. The power of accountability becomes even clearer when we look at how elite military units use it. Navy SEAL teams operate on what they call swim buddy pairs. Two SEALs who are responsible for each other at all times. This system isn't just about safety, it's about performance. When your actions directly impact someone else's success, you hold yourself to a higher standard. Chapter 11. Executing Through the Storm. Your fallback system. Some days you wake up feeling unstoppable. Other days you can barely drag yourself out of bed. This is the brutal truth. Motivation will fail you when you need it most. The key to winning isn't about feeling great every day. It's about learning how to execute even when you don't. The human mind is a complex machine that operates on cycles and rhythms. Your energy, focus, and drive naturally fluctuate. It's biology, not weakness. But here's what separates those who achieve their goals from those who don't. Successful people understand that feelings are irrelevant to action. Think about the last time you felt completely drained. Maybe it was after a long day at work or during a particularly stressful period in your life. In those moments, motivation isn't just low, it's non-existent. Every fiber of your being screams for rest, for delay, for surrender. This is precisely when you need a system that bypasses your feelings entirely. The difference between successful and unsuccessful people isn't that the successful ones feel motivated all the time. It's that they act regardless of how they feel. Resistance is always strongest when you're tired, stressed, or overwhelmed. But instead of waiting for the perfect moment, high performers have strategies to push through any conditions. Look at Jocko Willink, retired Navy SEAL commander and best-selling author. He wakes up at 4:30 a.m. every single day, not because he feels like it, but because he refuses to let emotions dictate his actions. Discipline equals freedom isn't just a catchy phrase for him. It's a system that works regardless of circumstances. If you want to be tougher mentally, it is simple. Be tougher. Don't meditate on it, Willink often says. This isn't about being harsh with yourself. It's about creating systems that work when motivation doesn't. To overcome resistance on bad days, you need automatic fallback habits, minimum effort actions that keep you moving. These aren't your ideal standards. They're your non-negotiable baselines. When everything else fails, these are the actions you can still execute. Take Sophia, a fitness enthusiast who transformed her approach to working out. Like many, she used to operate on an all-or-nothing mindset. On good days, she'd crush 2-hour training sessions. But when fatigue hit, or life got overwhelming, she'd skip the gym entirely. This pattern led to inconsistency and frustration until she developed her fallback system. Instead of demanding perfection, she established a minimum viable workout, 10 minutes of basic movement. No matter how exhausted she felt, she would do at least this much. The fascinating part? Once she started moving, she usually found the energy to do more. But even on days when she truly only did the minimum, she maintained her habit streak. This consistency proved more valuable than sporadic, intense workouts. The hardest part was accepting that doing less was better than doing nothing, Sophia explains. But once I embraced the fallback system, my entire relationship with fitness changed. I stopped seeing bad days as failures and started seeing them as opportunities to prove my commitment. This principle extends far beyond fitness. Writers can commit to one sentence when they're too drained for their usual word count. Entrepreneurs can make one sales call when they don't have energy for 20. Meditators can sit for 1 minute when they can't face their usual 30. The key isn't perfection, it's consistency. Your fallback system ensures that even on your worst days, you're still moving forward. It's like having a backup generator. When the main power fails, you don't plunge into darkness. You switch to emergency power. This approach is backed by behavioral science. Study shows that maintaining a habit, even at a reduced level, is far more beneficial than breaking the chain entirely. Each time you follow through, even with minimum effort, you reinforce your identity as someone who acts regardless of circumstances. Your challenge: pick one habit and create a minimum effort fallback. If you don't have time to write, commit to writing one sentence. If you're too tired for a full workout, do 5 push-ups. The goal is never to break the chain. Small actions keep you in motion, even on your worst days. Chapter 12. The Power of Ruthless Simplicity. Most people overcomplicate everything. They want the perfect morning routine, the perfect business plan, the perfect strategy, so they keep adding more. But here's the truth. Complexity kills execution. The simpler your plan, the easier it is to act on. If you want to take relentless action, you must master the art of ruthless simplicity. Your brain is like a computer. The more programs you run simultaneously, the slower it performs. When you pile on complexity, you're essentially running dozens of unnecessary background processes that drain your mental energy and processing power. This isn't just metaphorical, it's neurological reality. Every time you face a complex task, your brain performs a quick cost-benefit analysis. The more complicated something appears, the higher the perceived cost of action. This triggers what psychologists call cognitive load, a mental burden that often leads to decision paralysis and inaction. The brain craves simplicity. When things feel overwhelming, it shuts down and defaults to avoidance. This is why so many people get stuck, not because they can't do the work, but because they make it too complicated to start. Steve Jobs understood this principle at a profound level. He simplified everything, from product designs to his wardrobe, so he could focus on what really mattered. When he returned to Apple in 1997, the company had dozens of products. His first action? Cutting the product line by 70%. This wasn't just about business efficiency. It was about creating clarity that enabled decisive action. That's been one of my mantras, focus and simplicity, Jobs once said. Simple can be harder than complex. You have to work hard to get your thinking clean to make it simple. But it's worth it in the end, because once you get there, you can move mountains. The more you reduce friction, the easier it becomes to execute. This isn't about dumbing things down. It's about removing unnecessary complexity that stands between you and action. Think of it like clearing a path. The fewer obstacles in your way, the faster you can move. Meet Eli, an entrepreneur who spent months paralyzed by the complexity of content creation. He wanted to build an online presence but felt overwhelmed by all the details: which platforms to use, optimal posting times, lighting setups, editing software, thumbnail designs, keyword research, and endless optimization strategies. Every time he tried to start, the sheer number of variables would overwhelm him. He'd spend hours researching the perfect approach, only to end up doing nothing. The complexity had become a convenient excuse for inaction. Then he discovered the power of ruthless simplicity. Instead of trying to master multiple platforms, he chose just one. Instead of covering various topics, he picked a single focus. Instead of overthinking production value, he used his phone camera and basic editing. His new rule? One platform, one topic, one post per day. That's it. The results were transformative. Within a month, he had created more content than in the previous 6 months combined. The simplified approach didn't just make execution easier, it made it almost automatic. By removing unnecessary decisions, he eliminated the mental friction that had been holding him back. The hardest part wasn't learning new skills, Eli explains. It was unlearning the belief that more complexity equals better results. Once I embraced simplicity, everything clicked into place. This principle extends far beyond content creation. Look at successful morning routines. The ones that stick aren't elaborate 20-step processes. They're simple, repeatable actions that can be executed even when you're half awake. The same goes for fitness programs, business strategies, and personal development practices. This approach to simplification isn't about settling for less. It's about achieving more through focused effort. When you eliminate unnecessary complexity, you free up mental energy for what truly matters. You stop getting lost in details and start making real progress. The key to execution is stripping things down to their simplest form. This requires brutal honesty about what's essential and what's just noise. Ask yourself, what's the smallest number of steps needed to achieve this goal? What can I eliminate without significantly impacting the outcome? Often, you'll find that 80% of your results come from 20% of your actions. The trick is identifying that crucial 20% and ruthlessly eliminating everything else. This isn't easy. Our minds naturally want to add rather than subtract. But simplification is a skill that can be developed with practice. Start by auditing your current processes. Look for areas where complexity has crept in unnecessarily. Are you overcomplicating your work process with too many tools? Is your fitness routine so elaborate that it's becoming a barrier to consistency? Have you turned simple tasks into complex procedures? Remember, every additional step, decision, or variable you add creates another potential point of failure. The goal isn't to dumb things down. It's to make them smart enough to be sustainable. Your challenge: identify one area of your life where complexity is holding you back. Then, cut it in half. Reduce the steps. Eliminate unnecessary choices. Make it so simple that action becomes effortless. Don't ask yourself what you could add to improve. Ask what you could remove while maintaining effectiveness. Chapter 13. Fear is your green light. Fear whispers the same lie to you over and over: you're not ready. What if you fail? What will people think? These thoughts feel real, but they are nothing more than illusions designed to keep you stuck. Fear isn't a stop sign. It's a green light. The truth is, if something scares you, it's probably exactly what you need to do next. Your brain is hardwired for survival, not success. Every time you face uncertainty, it floods your system with the same chemicals that protected our ancestors from predators. But here's the crucial difference. While they faced physical threats, most of your fears are psychological. They can't actually hurt you. They can only hold you back. Think about this. Every time you've grown significantly in life, it wasn't because you felt safe. It was because you pushed through discomfort. That presentation that terrified you, the relationship you risked your heart for, the business idea you finally pursued. These moments of growth happened precisely because you acted despite your fear. Fear is the brain's way of protecting you from danger, but in today's world, most of our fears are psychological, not physical. Fear of failure, fear of embarrassment, fear of the unknown. None of these things can actually hurt you, yet they control people's lives. The difference between those who take action and those who don't is simple. Successful people see fear for what it is, an outdated response that no longer serves them. Take Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx. Growing up, her father would ask her the same question every week. What did you fail at this week? This wasn't cruel, it was revolutionary. He was teaching her to reframe failure from something to fear into something to pursue. When she started Spanx, she had no experience in retail or manufacturing. The industry experts told her it wouldn't work. But instead of letting fear stop her, she used it as a compass. Every time she felt afraid, she knew she was onto something important. My dad helped me understand that failure is not the outcome. Failure is not trying, Blakely has said. That mindset has been a huge part of my success. Today she's worth billions, not because she never felt fear, but because she trained herself to run toward it instead of away from it. When you stop fearing fear, it loses its power over you. This isn't about becoming fearless. It's about understanding that fear is often a signal pointing toward your next breakthrough. The bigger the fear, the bigger the potential growth. To dismantle fear, you must confront it head-on. Take Daniel, a corporate employee who spent years dreaming about starting his own business. Every time he thought about taking the leap, his mind would flood with worst-case scenarios. What if he lost all his savings? What if no one bought his product? What if he had to crawl back to his old job, humiliated? These fears felt overwhelming until he learned a powerful technique: fear exposure. Instead of trying to silence his fears, he wrote them down in explicit detail. What exactly was he afraid of? What was the absolute worst that could happen? As he documented each fear, something interesting happened. What had felt like massive, insurmountable obstacles on paper looked manageable. Even his worst-case scenario, complete business failure, wasn't actually life-threatening. He had skills, experience, and a network. He could always find another job if needed. This clarity didn't eliminate his fear, but it stripped away its power. He realized that what he actually feared wasn't failure itself, but the ambiguous cloud of anxiety he'd built around it. When he exposed his fears to the light of rational analysis, they began to shrink. Armed with this new perspective, Daniel started taking small steps toward his business dream. He began working on his business plan during lunch breaks. He reached out to potential mentors. He set aside a small portion of his savings as startup capital. Each action was still scary, but now he understood that fear was just part of the process, not a warning to stop. Fear thrives in uncertainty, but when you expose it, it disappears. This is why writing down your fears is so powerful. It forces you to confront the specific rather than the abstract. Most fears, when examined closely, turn out to be far less threatening than they appeared in the shadows of your mind. The key is to stop treating fear as an enemy and start seeing it as information. When you feel afraid of taking action, ask yourself, what's this fear trying to tell me? Often you'll find that the very thing you're afraid of is exactly what you need to do next. Consider this. If you weren't afraid of public speaking, would giving a presentation help you grow? If you weren't afraid of rejection, would asking someone out build character? If you weren't afraid of failure, would starting a business teach you valuable lessons? Fear often marks the boundary between comfort and growth. This doesn't mean you should act recklessly or ignore legitimate dangers, but it does mean learning to distinguish between rational caution and irrational fear. Real threats require attention and planning. Psychological fears usually require action and exposure. The process of overcoming fear isn't about waiting until you feel ready. It's about acting before you feel ready. Each time you move forward despite fear, you prove to yourself that fear isn't in charge. This builds what psychologists call fear tolerance, the ability to function effectively even when afraid. Think of fear tolerance like building muscle. You don't get stronger by avoiding weights. You get stronger by gradually lifting heavier ones. Similarly, you don't become more courageous by avoiding fear. You become courageous by gradually taking on bigger challenges. Your challenge: identify one thing you've been avoiding out of fear. Write down exactly what you're afraid of. Then ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen? When you shine a light on fear, you take away its control. Chapter 14. Making action automatic. Anyone can take action once. The real challenge is doing it every day. What separates the top 1% from everyone else isn't talent or intelligence. It's consistency. You've probably experienced this yourself. Bursts of motivation that fade, ambitious plans that fizzle out, promises to yourself that dissolve under the weight of daily life. The secret to long-term success isn't one big, dramatic push. It's making execution a daily habit that happens automatically, without effort. Your brain runs on habits, neural pathways that determine what you do without thinking. Right now, those pathways might be programmed for hesitation, overthinking, or avoidance. But here's the exciting truth. Just as your brain learned those patterns, it can learn new ones. The reason most people struggle to take action consistently is that they haven't trained their brain to do it on autopilot. They rely on willpower, which is like trying to run a marathon on a single energy bar. It'll get you started, but it won't get you to the finish line. Look at Stephen King, one of the most prolific writers of all time. He doesn't write when he feels inspired. He writes every single day, without fail, often producing over 2,000 words before noon. For him, writing isn't a choice. It's a deeply ingrained habit. That's why he's able to produce over 60 novels, while most aspiring writers never finish one. The difference isn't talent or creativity. It's that King has turned writing into something as automatic as brushing his teeth. I have a glass of water or a cup of tea and my vitamin pill, and I have my music, and I have my same seat, and the papers are all arranged in the same places, King has explained. The cumulative purpose of doing these things the same way every day seems to be a way of saying to the mind, you're going to be dreaming soon. This ritual isn't just about comfort. It's about programming his brain for automatic execution. The people who seem naturally disciplined don't have superhuman willpower. They've just built systems that remove the need for it. The science behind this is fascinating. When you repeat an action in the same context consistently, your brain creates neural pathways that make that action increasingly automatic. It's like your brain is laying down tracks for a train. The more times the train runs those tracks, the deeper and more established they become. Eventually, the train, your behavior, naturally follows those tracks without any conscious effort. But here's where most people go wrong. They try to build too many habits at once, or they make their habits too complex. Your brain resists dramatic change. It's like trying to redirect a river. Push too hard, and you'll just create resistance. The key is to start small and build gradually. The easiest way to turn action into a habit is through habit stacking, attaching a new habit to something you already do daily. This works because your brain already has established neural pathways for certain behaviors. By linking a new action to an existing habit, you're essentially hitchhiking on those pre-existing neural highways. Take Olivia, a medical student who struggled with consistent studying. Despite her best intentions, she could never maintain a regular study schedule. Every day became a battle with procrastination, and her grades were suffering. But instead of trying to force an entirely new routine, she attached studying to something automatic, drinking her morning coffee. I made a simple rule, Olivia explains. I'm not allowed to take the first sip of coffee until my study materials are open in front of me. Then I study for just 10 minutes while I drink my coffee. This tiny change had profound effects. Because she already had a strong coffee habit, the studying piggybacked on that existing pattern. She didn't have to remember to study or force herself to start. It just happened automatically with her morning coffee. Within weeks, those 10 minutes often stretched into hours because once she started, momentum took over. The key to Olivia's success wasn't willpower or motivation. It was understanding how habits actually form. She didn't try to revolutionize her entire routine. She simply attached a new behavior to an existing trigger. This is how lasting habits are built, not through force, but through intelligent design. The same principle applies to any action you want to make automatic. Want to work out consistently? Stack it onto your morning bathroom routine. Want to write daily? Do it right after checking your email. Want to make progress on a project? Work on it while you eat lunch. The specific stack doesn't matter as much as the consistency of the connection. Think of it like programming a computer. You're not trying to write entirely new software. You're just adding a new command to an existing program. This makes the change much easier for your brain to accept and implement. Here's what makes habit stacking so powerful. First, it eliminates decision fatigue. When an action is tied to an existing habit, you don't have to decide when or whether to do it. The trigger, your existing habit, automatically cues the new behavior. Second, it reduces resistance. By attaching the new habit to something you already do effortlessly, you're not asking your brain to create an entirely new pattern, just to extend an existing one. Third, it builds momentum naturally. As you successfully stack habits, your brain starts to expect and even crave the new behavior. What started as a conscious effort becomes an automatic sequence. Once a habit is ingrained, momentum makes it impossible to stop. This is why people who exercise regularly find it harder to skip a workout than to do it. Their brain has been programmed to expect and crave that activity. Chapter 15. The Relentless Execution Mindset. Some people take action when it's convenient. Others take action no matter what. The difference? Mindset. If you want to be someone who gets things done at a world-class level, you must adopt the mindset of relentless execution, where hesitation, excuses, and overthinking are simply not an option. Every time you negotiate with yourself about taking action, you create a gap where doubt can creep in. That gap is where mediocrity lives. Excellence demands elimination of that gap entirely. When you truly understand this, you'll realize that the question isn't, "Should I do this?" but rather, "How will I get this done?" The most successful people in the world don't operate with a sometimes mentality. They don't allow mood, circumstances, or fear to dictate their actions. Instead, they see execution as their default state. This mindset is what separates elite performers from the average. There's no internal debate about whether to show up. Showing up is simply what they do. Take Arnold Schwarzenegger. His career spans bodybuilding, acting, politics, and business. He succeeded in every field because of one thing: unwavering commitment to action. During his bodybuilding years, he trained on Christmas Day when the gym was closed. He would break in through the windows just to get his workout in. When pursuing acting, he took English classes and speech lessons for hours every day, refusing to let his accent be an obstacle. As governor, he applied the same relentless approach to politics. "The worst thing you can ever do is think that you know enough," Schwarzenegger often says. "Never stop learning, never stop growing, and never stop pushing." This isn't just motivation. It's a fundamental operating system for life. He didn't wait for ideal conditions. He created them through relentless execution. The power of this mindset lies in its simplicity. When you remove options from the equation, you eliminate the mental friction that prevents most people from taking action. It's like a fighter pilot who doesn't have the luxury of procrastination when enemy aircraft appear. They act because there is no other choice. To develop this mindset, you must remove options from your thinking. This means completely eliminating phrases like "I should," "I'll try," or "maybe later" from your vocabulary. These are just sophisticated forms of procrastination. Instead, you operate with absolutes. "I do," "I will," "it's happening." Meet Ryan, a personal trainer who struggles with waking up early to train his first client. Every morning becomes a battle between his alarm clock and his desire to sleep in. His results are inconsistent because his commitment is negotiable. But everything changes when he adopts the mindset of relentless execution. Instead of debating whether to get up, he changes his approach. He tells himself, "There is no choice. I train at 5 a.m. period." The moment he removes the option of skipping, execution becomes automatic. His alarm goes off and he's up before his mind can generate excuses. Within weeks, his business transforms because his clients know they can count on him absolutely. The key to Ryan's transformation wasn't finding more motivation or using better alarm clocks. It was eliminating the option of failure. When you stop negotiating with yourself, action becomes who you are, not just something you do. This shift from optional to non-negotiable changes everything. It's the difference between someone who works out when they feel like it and an athlete who trains regardless of circumstances. Between someone who writes when inspiration strikes and an author who produces pages every day without fail. Between someone who builds a business in their spare time and an entrepreneur who makes their vision reality no matter what. The beauty of the relentless execution mindset is that it actually requires less energy than inconsistent action. Why? Because you're not spending mental resources deciding whether to act. You just act. It's like brushing your teeth. You don't debate whether to do it. You just do it because that's who you are. Your challenge. Pick one area of your life where you need to be more relentless. Instead of making it a goal, turn it into a non-negotiable identity. When execution becomes who you are, success is inevitable. Conclusion. You've reached the end of this journey, but in reality, this is just the beginning. Everything you've learned about overcoming resistance, killing hesitation, building momentum, it all comes down to this moment. Right now. What you do next will determine whether this will become just another audiobook you've heard, or the turning point where everything changed. Knowledge without action is worthless. The world is filled with people who know exactly what they need to do, but never do it. They collect information, read books, watch videos, constantly preparing but never executing. This isn't just procrastination. It's a form of self-deception. They feel productive because they're learning, but they're really just avoiding the discomfort of action. This is your moment of truth. All the strategies, insights, and tools you've gained mean nothing if you don't use them. The next few minutes will determine whether this becomes another forgotten self-help audiobook or the moment everything changed. Your mind will try to convince you to wait, to prepare more, to start tomorrow. Don't let it. Tomorrow never comes. The only moment you can act is now. Close this audiobook and take immediate action on your most important goal. Not tomorrow, not in an hour, right now. Everything you need to know is already in your head. The only thing left is to act. Remember, this isn't about motivation or feeling ready. It's about forcing yourself to move forward despite every excuse and rationalization your mind creates. The time for learning is over. The time for action is now. Are you going to be someone who knows what to do or someone who does it? The choice is yours. Make it count. Thank you for listening and for investing in yourself. I believe in you. Your potential is endless. Now, go out there and create the life you deserve.